Hello, welcome back to this week's edition of the Blame Game. We got great news this week. The LCS time has shifted to 2 p.m., so it's going to be easier to watch for a lot of North American fans. We're going to keep that gravy train going, talking about the power rankings for the 2021-2023. Holy fuck, what year is it? LCS Spring Split. As always, these power rankings are projections towards the end of the split, where I think the final picture of the LCS regular season will look, not day one power rankings. And I want to say right at the top that this season is stacked. I'm so excited. That's one of the best things about this time change is now we get some positivity headed, because there's a lot to talk about at the league right now, like the teams that were put together and all this stuff. And this is not like last year where people were excited because there were some super teams, but like there was realistically 4 teams that were going to win. Here, there's like 7, 6 that could take home the championship. We're going to start at the bottom though, in teams that have no shot of that happening. Coming in at number 10 for me, it is unfortunately IMMORTALS. This is a team that, from the names on it, I'm excited for. It's a lot of young North American talent, journeymen from North America, people who are kind of getting second chances. Like there's a lot to root for on this team, but unfortunately, I just don't see it coming together with enough firepower. I think this is a team full of guys who could be serviceable role players on other teams. Like Tactical could be an X factor on a team that needs just someone who can potentially pop off sometimes. Blaze Olive had decent showings at mid at points of his career. I was a little sad the tail end of it, given how there was a split or two where he was looking very, very good. Kemby is really young. I hope to see more out of him. I think it was a tough situation for him that he joined last year, and Revenge has just slowly been developing over and over. So I want this team to do well because there's so many young guys. However, when you compare them against the rest of the LCS, I just don't see a consistent way that this team is going to win. I don't know what their win con immediately is. It might be just Tactical randomly being able to pop off, or maybe Kenvy's carry potential that we saw in Academy really manifests all of a sudden in Pro, but I just don't see it. Number 9 is TSM, and unlike IMMORTALS, where I had a lot of things I was really excited about, for TSM, I just don't have a strong emotional connection to this team right now. It's a lot of veteran players. Even Neo at this point is journeyman in his career. Chime is the really only young guy, and he is exciting. I really do like Chime, and I have no problem with any of the players on this team, but it definitely feels like one of these rosters that has a bunch of, again, players that on other teams could maybe help round out a roster, but here lacks a lot of firepower. It is, again, missing for me what I think is that ability to consistently win games in the LCS. But I will say, and this is the caveat, is that I do think this team has a bit of upside potential, where we saw in the playoffs run last year how they could actually take down teams that were struggling or just weren't 100% together. I do think that they are strong enough to actually do that. Yes, Spica's gone. I think Spica was very important, but Boogie, if he comes in and does well, from what I've seen from him over the years, he has the ability to have a big influence. And so if him and Maple become a just competent mid-jungle duo in the LCS, and they can play a more slow, controlled game. Solo definitely prefers that kind of play style. He's not the super aggro guy. I think that speaks to Neo's play style a little bit more. I could see a world where this is a team that kind of grinds out wins against people who make mistakes against them. And I do think that you can legitimately win in the LCS that way. And there's a world where some of the other teams I have above them don't really come together. And TSM, by being this kind of brick wall of just worn top and scaling stuff, that teams fall to that. And they could actually ceiling wise, I can see hitting top 5, top half of the league if some of the teams, like I said, above them fail. But it's not a team I'm particularly excited about, because I do think they have that ceiling. I don't think that this team can win the LCS, and considering that it's relatively old with imports and this kind of stuff, I'm just not super hot on it emotionally, or for what it's going to accomplish. Number 8, and a team that I think might have a consistent win con, is actually Golden Guardians. Behind the scenes, Gory has been sounding like he's been crushing scrims, and people are very excited about him. This could be the sleeper pickup of the entire offseason. And I can see a world where I look back at my rankings, and this looks very, very foolish if he is a top 3 mid laner in the LCS and helping carry Golden Guardians. Because I think the pieces around Gory, if he turns out to be this superstar, is competent enough to go much higher in these rankings. Licorice, he's hot, cold, kind of just hasn't seen the peak in a little while, but I think he's serviceable. River carried the corpse of Dignitas to a 5th place ranking in spring last split, or 6th, whatever it was, just by being able to beat 100 Thieves a couple of times. I think when he joined Golden Guardians, it did not pan out, but hopefully that team sounded like a bunch of crap was going down behind the scenes anyways. And Stixay and Huhi, I believe in both these guys just to be solid. I think Huhi caught some flack at the end of last year on a 100 Thieves team that had championship aspirations. that bot lane was just generally underperforming from what we knew they could be. But I think he's a huge mood maker on a team. He's just someone who's very easy to get along with and has a very good mind for the game. I think he brings a lot of intangibles to a team, which is something that's been true his entire career and kind of slept on for that reason. I don't know if Gory has like hella bad toxicity, but like otherwise this team seems like a team that has a very easy way of working together. Should mostly be on the same page. So I have a lot of faith that this team can actually be better than I'm placing them here. But I also see a world where Gory on stage is not 1v9ing or something, and this team just like is a little coin flippy if he pops off or not, and if he doesn't, then there's not enough other things going on the map to really help them out. This brings me to my number 7 team, and a team that I will say probably doesn't have a chance at the championship, but I know a lot of fans are going to say that they do and are going to hate me for putting him here. It's CLG at 7. I'm just the perennial CLG hater. Last split, I put them 10th after an abysmal spring. Their summer was way better, and I immediately, after seeing their 3-0 week 1, was like, oh, this team is legit top half of the league. And that's basically where they stay for the entire regular season. Postseason, they didn't get a big win, which I think maybe tarnishes that last split a little bit, but they were still competitive with a lot of the good teams in playoffs, pushing C9 to 5 games and stuff. So I think this is a team now that they took advantage though of like a very weak summer split that like kind of crept up on us, where EG started having some roster problems. Team Liquid just never really came together at all. C9 had a slow start, and by playoffs were incredible, but they were not in any sense world beaters in week 4 of the LCS in summer. And so I don't think that there was a ton of competition. EG was like legitimately good, and 100 Thieves was doing their typical like kind of slow start. Are they good? Are they not? Like it wasn't like a super stacked LCS in summer. And I don't think that's the case anymore. And this is the only team to not make any changes. So that does give the upside of, hey, they're going to hit the ground running most likely. And this is a team with the power of friendship. We talked about they're going to have a lot of built-in synergy. And I think just like also have a good combination of guys to like grind through a tough season. But I just think the LCS has leveled up around them a little bit. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And again, if any of the teams I have more faith in, or I think have more firepower than this team, don't come together, like that this is a solid group of guys. So I think like anything that can go wrong interpersonally, or like imports with culture shock, or like whatever it is, like that's not gonna happen to this team. So like there's no way this team busts. I don't think there's really a way that they get much lower than 7th. I think this is like a pretty like high floor team, whereas I think some of these other teams could be like, oh, they all fucking hate each other, and the roster changes by week 4. Like I just don't think that's gonna happen for CLG. This pushes me to my first team that I could legitimately see in some world lifting a championship, and that is Dignitas. Of all fucking teams, let's go Dig, actually putting together a competitive roster. I know last split they had a placing around here in spring, but it was, like I said, off the back of some random wins over 100 Thieves. You wanted to believe in them. Biofrost comeback story was nice, and they had some okay winning bot lanes, but it was just not strong enough to consistently get those wins against other teams once they started figuring their stuff out, and then it was a pretty bad summer split. So here, I legitimately think that like you have really good talent all around them. Obviously, Jensen Santorin is the big pickup for them this offseason. Proven winners on Team Liquid, really great synergy. Both have that little bit more of a control play style. I think that can suit them very well. They know what they want to do. Jensen had a pretty good performance after a slow start coming back from his hiatus in summer, but I think by playoffs in Worlds, he was looking pretty good. Maybe not like exactly peak Jensen, but it's not like he was a dumpster fire or anything. Santorin is like legitimately always top 3 at least in the LCS for junglers. And even when he's not, it's not because he underperformed, but like maybe someone had a pop-off split. Jungle is one of the better roles in LCS. And so like, yeah, sometimes you might not put him on your all-pro ballot, but like he always is in that conversation. He never looks bad. Arma rounds out the top side, and like this is a team, I will say it right now, that does have their problems. I think you can talk about maybe Jensen's inconsistency in the regular season. We'll get into the bot lane in a second here. And Arma, of course, with his kind of volatility, both in terms of playing and the shallow champion pool, can maybe make him look maybe disjointed from the rest of the team if they're doing something else on the bot side of the map. He's just doing random stuff in the top side. But I think when he's playing well, he is legitimately good. He's been in the conversation of one of the better top laners in EU for a while. I know European fans have memed the fact that Arma is one of their best top laners. He's like, all right, Gnar, Wukong, Warren, I think with the 3, like whatever it is, it's like, okay, but that can work in the regular season. I feel like champion pools don't get targeted as hard in the regular season. It becomes a problem in the postseason, and we'll see if they can solve that by then. But like just in terms of his level of play, I think he'll be competitive with top players in the LCS, looking pretty good. Bot lane, I think, is where people have a lot of concerns about their skill, but I think Spawn's been very good in the academy scene for a while now. I think the few glimpses that I think people have seen of him have not always been in the best circumstances, and here he's debuting on a legitimately good team, which will give him the opportunity to kind of live up to some hype that I think he has deservedly gotten during points of his time in academy. And if he is able to just be able to hold his own, I think this team can still pick up a lot of wins. I think that's a big difference between him being like an okay rookie or like young NA player compared to a lot of the teams below him here. Is like he doesn't really need to carry. I think there's enough carry potential around him here that like if he's just serviceable in team fights, this team can still pick up a lot of wins. Pairing him up with Ignar is a really interesting choice. I feel like Ignar is kind of like a jungler. Like junglers' performance kind of hinges on how good the rest of their team is. Sven Skaren is like the epitome of this for me, where he just has this really aggressive aggro engage style, where if he's on a good team that are following up with him and having leads to like execute on his vision, then he looks incredible. He's like MVP level, but he will make the exact same plays on a team that has no chance of these plays working out, and he'll look like dog water. But it's like it's the same Sven, you know. And I feel like Ignar's kind of like that. He has not been on great teams recently, and he's like, fuck it, YOLO flanking, gonna win the game here. And it's like, no, you guys are so far behind. He gets caught out, dies. Looks like he's playing for himself a little bit. And I think he's just like a hero player. You know, he's looking for an opportunity to win the game at every point in the game. And, you know, when you're on a bad team that doesn't have many opportunities, it looks like you're running it down. And here I think they could use this little bit of primary engage potential. I think Santorin works a little bit better on follow-up. I think that's one of the reasons him and Court JJ worked well. I think I can see that working here with Ignar maybe taking more of a primary engage role. So I can see a world where this team does work out very well, but I do have to acknowledge all the concerns, and maybe why I have them maybe more 6 is the Armit concerns, Jensen, the bot lane, like all they do have like these little tiny red flags that you have to acknowledge. This brings me to number 5, and a pretty controversial one, I think, and that is Cloud9. This team just won Summer Split, and they only changed out a single player. Diplex? What is this guy's fucking name? Dimitri. So Diplex? Whatever, who cares? Anyways, I admit I have not done my homework yet on this kid, so part of this is just not super accurate. I've done research on most of the people that are joining the LCS, but haven't got a chance to dig into him. I will say a couple things here. Like, obviously, Sven had joked about, even on the broadcast, like the meta was really good for him. It was Lulu Yumi. It's still basically Enchanter meta, so I have a lot of faith in them. Berserker's going to still be super, super strong. I do think the 80 carry pool has gotten better around him, which we'll hear about as we get into some of these other people. Diplex for me is a big question mark, but like Blabber has worked well with every mid laner I've seen him play with, even when it's like not super good synergy, like him and Perks, like they're still good enough to just get shit done. And I feel like there's a reason to still believe it's always going to work out mid jungle with Blabber. And I will say that like Cloud9, if there's one team you should not doubt their scouting capabilities, it's Cloud9. Every time they call somebody up, they get rid of a fan favorite. Everyone goes, oh, what are you doing, Cloud9? And then they go ahead and they win again. So it's kind of the case here. Fudge was, again, also basically uncontested best top laner in the LCS by the end of Summer Split. Again, I do think there's been a big level up potentially in top laners here, so that he might get contested a little bit more, but I don't think he's gonna get blown out of the water or really struggle that much. So like this is a team I have a lot of confidence in. Like 5th is basically as low as I think anyone should put them, and I happen to put them here maybe because I'm just a little bullish on some other teams. But this team is legitimately a title threat. They could go anywhere like 1 through 5. I think these top 5 for me are so fluid. I have zero confidence in this ranking. So I'm just going off hype and gut. You know, like I think there's a lot of reasons to have more faith in Cloud9 than I'm giving him here that I just listed. Like there's I talked about red flags previously for Dig. There was a lot here. There's like no real red flags for Cloud9 other than like Diplex is suddenly a whiff from Cloud9's scouting department, and Sven can't play engagers well. And that's like the 2 red flags that you kind of have. And we're not in an engage meta, so like whatever. Like it's so hard to doubt this team, but I found a way. This brings me to number 4 and Team Liquid, and this is the team I am most interested in. Not because like I'm really rooting for any one particular player, but if they do what Dodo said, this is a team that I am just really intrigued to see how it works out. They have gone for the TLCK. I think people have somehow taken this too far, and they think that like they're legitimately all Korean just because they can all speak Korean. That's not the case. You know, Jan is American. Harry is from Osh. You know, I think he's Australian. So like, there's no reason to take this as like they're literally all Korean. But they do have a lot of Koreans on the team with also the coach Marin and stuff. But like, I appreciate that they are trying to take the like LCK grind set approach and bring it to the LCS and just level up. And if this team does better than 4, and they're leading the league, and they're kind of like pushing the envelope forward, this is a team that I can see having an impact not just for themselves, but also like the broader NA ecosystem, and kind of like forcing people to approach the game the way that they are approaching it. So like, I have a bit of a vested interest in wanting them to do better than 4, but when we talk about things that might not go great, I do think it is a little scary to have 2 young North American talents stepping into your 2 primary carry roles. This is where the most important place to have your firepower is, mid and AD carry. Harry and Jan have been crushing it in Academy. The TL Academy team has just been pilfered and spread to the wind. You know, like, they're so good. But at the same time, it is a little dicey. They do have incredible veteran talent around them that should make it very easy. Core JJ is an absolute stud. Pioshik, though he is just an active world championship, just won the world championship, I think people might get overhyped by that fact. He does have his struggles at times. There was a period of time in Summer Split before qualifying for Worlds where they were swapping him out with Juhan, and there was like a question of how they were going to do, and DRX was a bit of a fucking mess in Summer Split. So like, it's not like he's permanently just like goated, you know, but like he does have that potential to fucking win a world championship and look pretty good while doing it. So definitely a lot of firepower around these 2 young guys. I don't think they're going to be like, you need to carry us, otherwise we won't win the games. Like, I don't think that's true, especially when you factor in Summit, who's coming back. Yes, champion pool issues people are still gonna have. Yes, I bet he still plays like a madman, pushing up and dying a lot. Like, that's all still gonna be the case. But you know what, like, I think he's in a maybe better team environment, given the ability for everyone to communicate the same way and approach the game the same way. I think that might get rid of some of what sounds like there were some tension points on Cloud9. So I have a lot of confidence in this team, even if they don't come out the gate immediately well. And that's why I have them 4th here, is I do think, whether it's culture shock, whether it's just like getting used to each other, the young talent, I don't think that they're like necessarily going to hit the ground running, but I think that this is a team that can level up a lot over time. This is more of like a summer split team to me than a spring split team, because you take the 2 young guys, you expect them to get better. You take this grind set approach of just like, we're going to put in more work than the other team. That might not pay off week 1. But by summer split, if you haven't burnt out, you should start seeing bigger returns. And so that's where I think this team will peak. I don't think it's a spring split team. So I'm very excited to watch them over the course of the year, but I just don't think it's going to come together in spring. This brings me to another controversial choice, probably in 100 Thieves at 3rd. All right, listen, I know this is not Reddit's favorite team. There's a big backlash against these fucking washed ass boomers. Doublelift and Bjergsen coming back together, these grandpas of the LCS, get them out of here, blah, blah, blah. I know, I get it. This is a team, again, when we keep talking about red flags, has a lot of them, all right? Yes, these 2 guys, Bjergsen, I think, was better than a lot of people wanted to give him credit for last split, but it is true to say that like he was not MVP Bjergsen. I do think that there is concerns about Doublelift after taking so long off, and even the last time they did win a championship together, the last time these 2 guys played together, but Doublelift was struggling a little bit more in lane and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't like he was hands down best AD carry in the league at that point. So like, yeah, there were a little bit of concerns there, but I think this is a team that knows it's gonna have to put the work in to do well. I think they're gonna have a lot of fun playing together again. I just have a lot of faith in Bjergsen and Doublelift as a duo playing together, doing very well. I don't think that they will do poorly. I think also Busio and Tenacity also have that bit of synergy. So like, this is a team with a lot of like little synergies built in. They played together. You also have Closer. They've all been a part of the 100 Thieves organization for an extended period of time, so they'll kind of be able to feel comfortable in day 1. Speaking of Closer, this guy's been to 3 straight finals in the LCS. He is a stud. And yes, 100 Thieves did have a lot of talent around him. You know, obviously who he did a lot for that team, I think, behind the scene. I think Someday was a big part of that team. But at the end of the day, it was Closer's team. Everyone knows it was Closer's team. Anytime there was a big moment, it was Closer's time to step up and shine. And he usually did. And 100 Thieves' slow regular season that they tend to have, I do think you can somewhat maybe pin on him, because he does feel like a clutch player, and if it's just not like a big moment to rise to, there's nothing to rise to. And I think he always peaks in postseason and stuff like that. So maybe this is the team with some rust on their older players, with the young guys needing to level up, with Closer, I don't know, not trying to find insane Lee Sin kicks in the game 5 with a roaring crowd around him. You know, like, I can see a world where this team is just not like setting the world on fire in the regular season. Maybe 3rd is too high. But this is a team I have a lot of confidence in. I think the concerns are that, you know, just like Busio and Tenacity fall a little flat with their debuts. Top lane is a little tough this split, I think, with just like the Impact someday brick wall, Armut joining being decent, Fudge obviously being incredible, Doklo's been leveling up, Summit coming back. Like, it is a relatively tough top lane pool to come up against, but if Tenacity can hold his own, again, we talk about firepower, I think while Doublelift and Bjergsen are not like the 1v9 threats that they might have been in the old days, they're still fucking good. And I think this team will have like pretty good macro and understanding, and Closer can be a huge force as well. So just so much talent in this roster. I have confidence in them to be really good, especially in the postseason. Maybe I'm overrating them in the preseason. Number 2 for me is Evil Geniuses. Now, this is a team that, for the most part, feels the same as last year. There were some big changes, and I do think that they are worth talking about. But for the most part, I think the soul of this team is intact in some sense. Like, Vulcan, you can make the case, has been the best player in the LCS over the last X number of years, right? Like 2 years, he's won a lot of titles, this kind of stuff. He's been basically the best support. Him and Core JJ have gone back and forth, leaning towards Vulcan in recent splits. So like, he's incredible. He's still here. Obviously, inspired as a fucking god. He's still here. Jojo Pune. This kid had basically the best rookie split I feel like we've seen out of a North American player in forever. And there's no reason to think he's capped, right? Like, we saw his growth over the course of the year. He was 1v9ing in playoffs to keep the team alive as they were going through this implosion. You can make the case that EG was the best team overall last year. Despite, not winning in summer and having a slow start in spring, like, they did do very well in lock-in. They were only 9-9. It wasn't like they were bad in spring split. Then they win there. Okay MSI performance, dominate summer split, go through an implosion, but still have enough talent on this roster to make it to Worlds. So like, this is a team that, while they have changed out some stuff, the core pieces of why they were so good last year is still here for me. Someday for Impact is a notable change. I think that they are both kind of that like weak side. You can kind of leave them on an island. They'll do things. There's slight differences. I think Impact has a little bit more tendency towards tanks, and if you push him off them, he might go weird, whereas like Someday stays pretty standard and might play the carries slightly better. I think also personality-wise, there's pretty big differences. Impact is pretty goofy, can be quite vocal. Someday seems more reserved. So it's not like 100% the same thing. If Impact was doing a large part of macro, which sometimes I think he is, I don't know if Someday's going to do that exact same role. And obviously FBI is someone I have my eye on. I would be so sad if he did peak in 2020, 2021 spring, like that was the best FBI we're going to see. I do like separating him from Huhi a little bit to see like, okay, what do we got here? I think Danny had his problems, in lane, people talked about them, not the best, but he had this magical pop-off potential that no matter how bad the game was going, no matter what else was happening, you felt like, well, we can always win because Danny's on our team. Like, Danny just had that ability to take over a game and make it about him. And I don't think FBI has that. I don't think FBI, the laning might be a little bit better, but I think the legitimate 1v9 carry potential is more lacking here. I don't think the team needs it. I think that was just a great safety valve that the EG's team had last year. And if FBI can just come in and do well in a very difficult, 80 carry team environment right now, LCS environment. If FBI can come in and just do well in a very competitive LCS 80 carry position pool and just be top half of the league, I think this team has legitimately one of the best rosters in the LCS. However, I think they are outclassed by my number 1 team, FlyQuest, baby. And this is a team that I am so hyped about. Are there concerns? Yes, let's get those out of the way. First off, no one on this team has played together. Second off, 2 of them are coming from Korea. Like, culture shock could happen. Who knows what's going to go on? Ayla is debuting in the LCS himself. Speaker was coming off a very tough year in TSM last year. Impact, honestly, I have nothing. There's no red flags for Impact. He's legitimately always on good teams. Even going back to his tip days of all teams that like, yep, they were good because he was on it. But the firepower, dear God, the firepower on this team. Prince is just legitimately like world-class 80 carry threat in the bot lane, can absolutely 1v9 games and can carry the entire time. Like, he is incredible. Vikla is a very, very good LCK mid laner. Like, there's a pantheon of gods of the LCK. The mid lane talent there is just insane. The Chovies, the Fakers, Showmaker, like they're crazy. And he's not quite in that like major god territory, but he is like the minor gods of the people who were challenging them during that time period. He can step up and have moments where they legitimately can carry games against these incredible players. He was pushing into that category. Zeka obviously ascended in the Worlds run, but like Vikla was someone to keep your eye on during that time period. He is very, very good. And I think the mid lane pool is just, in North America, it's a lot better this split, but it's just not comparable to what he was going up against week in, week out in the LCK. And the fact that he has carry potential, like he could come in and be the best mid laner in North America, right? And the thing is too, like maybe that's not gonna happen, but the other people who are in that conversation are not like individually dominant players like Bjergsen, Jensen, Palafox, like Jojo Pune's maybe the only one, but like a Blaze Olive, like maybe some of the other newer guys can step in and also try and be like more individually carry oriented, like Jojo Pune has been of the younger talent. Maybe Diplex can do that, Harry as well, you know, Gory potentially. So maybe it's not immediately obvious that Vikla will be the best, but like it's leaning towards him, I think, to at least have the most dominant performances in the LCS. So like you have that. Prince can easily be the best AD carry in the LCS. Impact can easily be the best top laner in the LCS. He's always flirting with that number. It's just about, you know, like, did anyone pop off hard enough because he's just such a rock? It's a question of, did anyone outdo his steadfastness? Spica won MVP 2 years ago. Yes, he did not look great on TSM, but that TSM was a fucking dumpster fire. And like by the time summer rolled around, they started to stabilize their roster and playoffs were happening. It felt like Spica was like, just give me the rock and then let me just get out of here and look good on the way out. And he kind of did, honestly. I think he did. So I think there'll be a huge return to form for Spica. I think he'll be really hungry to prove it too, especially with a team this good. And Ayla, hot take, the best Team Liquid looked last year. Think about it. When was the best Team Liquid looked over the entire course of the year? It was at the start of spring with Ayla. That's when they looked like the best team that they ever looked that entire year. Not with Core JJ, okay? Now, I'm not saying Ayla is better than Core JJ, but at least speaks to the fact that, like, on a star-studded roster like that Team Liquid was, Ayla was the one shining. It wasn't just like, hey, he was there and they were still winning. Great. It was like his Thresh was turning heads. Yes, obviously Thresh is the best champion, but like he was able to hang with superstars and look like he fit in naturally. And if this team is gelling, I expect that to stay true. The support position in the LCS is not like suddenly turbo insane. I mean, there are some new bot lane combinations that might contest him a little bit more than maybe was happening in spring at that time last year, but like for the most part, there's no reason to think that like if Prince and him have some level of synergy, that it won't look like he and Hans did during that time period last year. This is a team that legitimately could have top 3 players in every single position in the LCS quite easily, and that's why I'm so hot on this team. There's a very high chance that it doesn't all come together, but if it does, it's going to be fucking incredible. That's going to do it for this episode of The Blame Game. I hope you guys enjoyed. Looking back on this in a couple months, I bet I look like a fucking idiot, but I still had a lot of fun making this. Remember, the LCS Spring Split kicks off next week at 2 p.m. on Thursday. It's at a different time. Get ready. It's going to be great.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel after the holiday break. I'm back here at the LCS. We're covering all sorts of cool stuff and getting hyped for this year. So please be sure to check it all out, subscribe to this channel, and then shout out to Alienware for sponsoring so much of what we do here. Wouldn't be able to cover this year without them. So thank you so much to Alienware. You can check them out at the link in the description below, and purchasing something from them helps us out here.